This video will talk you through how to knit the diamond range socks. You can get this pattern for free on Ravelry using the discount code FREEDIAMOND, or if you want to support me in any way, you can pay 50% off or full price. It's up to you. The diamond rain socks are knitted with a combination of lace and mock eyelet cables and are knitted cuff down with a half twisted rib cuff and a slip stitch heel flap and gusset for durability, plus they have optional anatomic toes for comfort. In this tutorial I'm going to be knitting size 2, which is the equivalent of a 66 stitch cast on. I'm going to be using this opal sock yarn in the colour caramel, or 5189. I recommend that you use a fingering weight sock yarn that is around 75% wool and 25% nylon, but of course it's entirely up to you. I want this pattern to be as accessible as possible for all levels of skill. Everybody has to start from somewhere, and if you want to make the leap from beginner to intermediate, then this is for you. The first page of the pattern will talk you through sizes, measurements, needles, gauge, and yarn choices. There are 3 sizes available, but this will of course vary depending on how you block and wear your socks. I recommend knitting these on a 2.25mm needle, and this pattern is written with magic loop in mind. The second page of the pattern takes you through all of the abbreviations that you will see throughout the rest of the pattern. It contains the normal, very common abbreviations such as knit and purl, but also some slightly more obscure ones such as EMC, which is eyelet mock cable. Okay, let's talk about charts. This is a charted pattern, and each size has a different chart. I've done this so that it is easier for everybody instead of having to work out where they need to place the additional purl stitches. So make sure you are knitting the correct chart for your size. The pattern itself begins on page 6, and it will tell you to cast on the number of stitches required. I'm going to talk you through step by step on the assumption that you've never knitted socks before, in order to accommodate all levels of skill. If you know how to knit socks, if you're an avid sock knitter, if you're an advanced knitter, please feel free to use the timestamps to skip to the point in the video that will be most helpful for you. The first thing you're going to want to do is cast on. To do this, I like to simply use a long tail cast on over 2 needles. I find this gives enough stretch for a sock, but isn't so loose that it will be baggy. To get a good estimate of how much of a tail you need for a long tail cast on, take your yarn and wrap it around your needle for the same number of stitches you need to cast on. For size 2, I need to cast on 66 stitches, so I will wrap it around 66 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then to save myself having to do it the full number of times, I am just going to estimate and go 10. That's 20. That's 40. And that's approximately 60. If your tail is too short, you can just repeat the process and try again. If it is too long, you can just cut off the excess once your cast on is complete. Now you have your tail. To begin your cast on, you want to pick up your yarn, twist it, and place it over your needle like so. Then you want to sandwich it between your middle finger and 4th finger and open it with your index finger and your thumb. I'll do that again. You want to sandwich it and open. You should find that your tail is at the front and the yarn attached to the ball is at the back. So I will just do that. Now you should be faced with something like this. What you want to do is, with both of your needles, bring them down in front of that front tail, go underneath through this gap, bring it back to grab the yarn heading over your finger, and pull it back down through the hole. You can now slip your thumb out of the loop and pull down, and this will cast on a stitch. So I'm going to go under, grab, through the hole, tighten. That's under, grab, through the hole, tighten. Every few stitches you'll want to let your tail go and repeat your grasp, because as you cast on stitches, the tail will begin to untwist itself. So you can see here, the twist is very, very, very loose. So I want to let go of my tail, let it twist itself back up again, and I can continue casting on my stitches. I let go, I continue casting on. Once you've cast on your stitches, it should look like this. The pattern asks you to divide the stitches equally between the two needles and join in the round for magic loop. This means different things to different people. You can split them evenly and just start knitting, or you can cast on an additional stitch in order to physically join the round before you begin. So I have casted on 67 stitches, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to carefully pull out one of my needles, like so, and I'm going to divide the stitches. So what I want to do is half of the stitches will be on one needle and half of the stitches will be on the other. In order to join them with the additional stitch, you want half the number of stitches plus one on your first needle. So 3, 6, 9, 12, 33, 34. What you're going to do is slide this onto the cable portion of your needle, fold your cable in half, slide your stitches down and pull your cable back so that you now have your stitches on both needles. Now, because I cast on an additional stitch, what I'm going to do is take the first stitch and place it on the second needle. That is the needle that the yarn is still attached to. If you want, you can use a crochet hook for your fingers. I am going to use a crochet hook just because I am very clumsy and I will absolutely drop it. So I'm just grabbing the stitch, slipping it off, and slipping it on to my second needle. You can now take the last stitch that you cast off over that first stitch and pull on your yarn, and you will close that gap, like so. In order to start knitting with magic loop, you want your stitches to be positioned the correct way with your tail on the correct needle. For this, you can see I have the right side showing of the cast on, as opposed to the wrong side showing where you can see these purl bumps. What I'm going to do is pull my needle out so that these stitches sit on the cable. The pattern says work in half twisted rib to create the cuff. Knit 1 through back loop, purl 1 and repeat to end of round. I'm going to knit the first stitch through the back loop. Purl 1, knit 1 through the back loop, and purl. Note that when you're knitting through the back loop, you're not knitting normally, you're coming in from behind and going through back leg of the stitch. Purl, knit one, purl, all the way around. Now I want to transfer the stitches on the cable back onto my needle. So I'm going to drop this needle, pull on the cable in order to push it back, push the stitches back onto the needle. I'm going to rotate, pick up my tail, so I pick up my yarn, and then pull that first needle out and put the stitches onto the cable. I can then carry on knitting. The last stitch was a knit stitch, so I'm going to purl. That is your first row of ribbing complete, and the pattern suggests doing 12 rows of ribbing or until it reaches your desired length. I'm going to knit this ribbing and then I'll meet you back up and tell you how to start the chart. I've now knit 12 rows of rib and I'm ready to move on to the leg. The pattern says to begin the lace according to the chart, and each row of the chart is worked twice, once for the front of the leg and once for the back of the leg. You need to make sure that you choose the right chart for the size that you're knitting. I am knitting size 2, so I need the chart for size 2. If you've never knitted from a chart before, I promise it's so much easier than it looks. Imagine a chart like paint by numbers. In each section, it tells you exactly what to do via the key. So down here, you read charts from right to left. You start down here on row 1, stitch 1, and you can see it's a blank box. Up here in the key, you can see that this is a knit stitch. So you will go knit, knit, then the box with the dot in it. If you check up here, that's a purl stitch. So it goes knit, knit, purl, purl, knit, 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 purl, purl, and so on. So I'm going to knit the first row with you. It's knit, knit, and we're knitting through the front loop this time, not through the back loops. Then we have purl, purl. So bring that yarn to the front and purl 2 stitches. Then we have 3 knit stitches. Followed by 2 purls. Here you might want to stop and count. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 stitches. These are the same 15 stitches that will have the diamond pattern. So between each of your purl stitches, you should have 15 stitches on every row. So knit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Then we have 2 purl stitches, 3 knit stitches, 2 purl stitches, and 2 knit stitches. Remember, I'm knitting the size 2, and if you're knitting a different size, you will have a different number of purls. You're going to repeat that for the second side. Okay, I have now knit the first row on both sides. So let's work row 2 together. This again starts with knit, knit, purl, purl, knit, 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 purl, purl, and knit across. This is the first row of the repeat, and first different stitch is here where you have a knit 2 together. So I'm going to knit across the row until I get to this point. So I'm coming towards the end of the row. I have my knit 3, which is this bit here. Then I'm going to purl 2, and here I have 2 stitches left. So I need to knit 2 together, which is this one here, and then I need to yarn over. So knit 2 together, and you will see I now no longer have any stitches, and I yarn over and turn. So when you knit the other side, oh my goodness, oh, let's get my needle in. So when you knit the other side, your yarn should be coming from over the top of the needle. So you want to pull your needle out, and that yarn should be behind the cable instead of in front. So I knit 2, purl 2, and I will continue across the row in the exact same manner that we have done. Salem, please get down. So again, I'm approaching the end. I'm on the final purl stitches, so I'm going to purl 2, knit 2 together, and put my yarn over the needle so that when I rotate, the yarn is coming from the back. I'm going to pull my cable back through. Make sure that my yarn is still behind that back needle. So we're going to knit the next row, which is row 3, and that is where our diamond pattern really begins. So we start with our border stitches. We have knit 2, make sure I'm in frame, knit 2, purl 2, knit 3, and purl 2. Okay, this is where our diamond pattern begins, and it is 15 stitches wide. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stitches before our first knit 2 together. So we knit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then we have a knit 2 together. So we insert our needle into both stitches and knit them as if they were one. Then we have a yarn over. Then a knit stitch, followed by another yarn over. Then you have an SSK, which stands for slip, slip, knit. So you want to slip a stitch knitwise, slip the second stitch knitwise, then place them back onto your left needle and knit them through the back loop. This creates a left leaning decrease, whereas the knit 2 together creates a right leaning decrease, and it's these decreases that give us the diamond shape. So after the SSK, we have another 5 stitches. Followed by our border stitches. So we have knit 2, sorry, purl 2, knit 3, purl 2, knit 2. Now as you come to your final stitch, it should just be this wide loop that's not a proper stitch. This is the yarn over from the previous row. So you're just going to knit into it and allow it to form a hole, because this is the hole that will create the lace. You're going to repeat that for the other side, and then we'll move on to row 4. Okay, so we're ready to knit row 4, and the first stitch of row 4 is this yarn over. So for yarn overs at the very beginning of the row, I find it easiest to just pull my needle down over that yarn. So I just pull it towards me, and that is my yarn over. So then we want to SSK, so that's slip knitwise, slip again and knitwise, place them onto the left needle and knit through the back loop. Then we can continue. We have our purl 2, and then you'll come across this funny symbol here. And if you look up here, you'll see this is the EMC. That's the eye mocklet cable. So to do this, you want to insert your right needle into the 3rd stitch. See, I have 1, 2, 3. You want to insert it into the 3rd stitch on the left needle and pass it over those first 2 stitches. Then you want to knit into the 1st stitch, yarn over, and knit that 2nd stitch. And that creates the first of our eyelet mock cables. Then we're going to continue. We have a purl 2, knit our diamond section, and repeat the border stitches. So we have purl 2, knit 15, and now here we're at our 3 knit stitches. We're at that funny symbol again. So we're going to take this 3rd stitch and lift it over those first 2 stitches. Then knit 1, yarn over, you should see some little holes starting to appear. Again, these are the holes that will form the diamond pattern. So repeat that for the following side, and then we'll move on to row 5. Okay, so we're ready to knit row 5 of our pattern. So we have our border stitches. Your first stitch should be a yarn over, so it should be a nice big floppy loop that we knit into like that. Then we want to continue with our border stitches, just as it says on the chart. When we get to our stitches above that mock cable, we just knit them. Until we get to our diamond section. So, row 5, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 knit stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Then we have a knit 2 together and a yarn over. So we knit 2 together, yarn over. Then we have 3 knit stitches. 1, 2, 3, followed by a yarn over and an SSK. Yarn over, slip knitwise, knit 2 together through the back loop. Then we have 4 knit stitches until we get to our border stitches at the side. I'm going to just knit the border stitches. We have purl 2, knit 3, purl 2, and knit 2. So this is what forms the basis of our diamond pattern. We have these yarn overs creating the base, and the right leaning and left leaning decreases that form the clean lines in the middle of the diamond. You should now have a pretty good idea of how to read the charts. So for row 6, you just check each of these boxes for their stitch. You have your normal knit 2, purl 2, knit 3, purl 2, knit across the 15 stitches, purl 2, knit 3, purl 2, knit 2 together and yarn over. So you just want to keep knitting each row of the chart. I'm going to go ahead and knit up to row 19, which is the first row where we see something a little bit different is the first row where we see this double decrease where we slip one, knit two together and pass that slipped stitch. So I'm going to knit up to row 19 and then I will meet you there. Okay, I've knitted up to row 19. You should now have something that looks like this. You can see our diamond taking shape in the middle. We have our eyelet mock cables going up either side, and across the very edges we have this little bit of lace forming. So I'm going to go ahead and knit row 19 with you now. Now our last stitch for row 18 was a yarn over, so with the yarn overs you need to make sure that that yarn is coming from behind the needle. So I'm going to pull my needle out and begin knitting row 19. So I'll start with the border stitches. We have knit 2, purl 2, knit 3 and purl 2. Now we're at our diamond section, so you can see we have 3 stitches, 3 knit stitches, 1, 2, 3. Then we have a yarn over and an SSK. So I'm going to yarn over, slip, slip, knit 2 together through the back loop. Then we have knit 1, and then we have our funny little double decrease here. So I'm going to knit 1. Now this decrease, it's a double decrease, which is what will give us that point of the diamond. So what I'm going to do is yarn over, slip 1 stitch to my right needle, knit 2 together, and then take that slipped stitch over my needle. This is what gives us the double decrease. This is what gives us that point at the top of the diamond. And then we can continue on with the row. So yarn over, we have 1 stitch and a knit 2 together. So knit 1, knit 2 together, like so. Then we have a yarn over and 3 knit stitches. So yarn over, 1, 2, 3. Then I will do the border stitches. And as you can see here, I dropped the yarn over off my needle. If that happens, you can just find the long bar between both sides. This is where the yarn over should be, but if you missed it, it's pretty easy to just grab. So I will knit that yarn over. And that is the point of our diamond. The next time that we encounter this is at the top of the chart, so I'm going to finish off the chart and I will let you know how to begin your heel. So your sock should now look something like this. I've just finished knitting the chart for the first time. If you want a longer sock, you can knit more pattern repeats. Just make sure that you end on either round 13 or round 25. I've only done 1 repeat because I like my socks to be a little bit shorter. So now I'm going to go ahead and talk you through how to do your heel. So you'll see in the pattern it says heel flap, and you want to work the next row of the chart on needle 1. So if you finished up here like me, you want to work row 2 because the pattern repeat goes from 2 to 25, you don't work row 1 again. If you finished on row 13, then you want to work a row 14. So I'm going to go ahead and work row 2. Okay, I've now worked row 2 across my needle 1. And you're going to turn to needle 2, and you need to set up for the heel flap. The heel flap is worked over the stitches on needle 2 only, and it's worked back and forth. So I'm now going to set up for the heel flap. I'm going to slip one purlwise, and then I want to make one right. So I'm going to pick up the yarn and place it on my needle so that the leg of the stitch is on the front. So if you pick it up with your left needle, you're picking it up from behind. If you're picking it up with your right needle and placing it on, you want to pick it up from the front and place it over the needle so that you have that leg on the right. Now this can get a little bit tight, so I like to pull the stitch forward a bit like that. And then you want to knit the stitch through that front leg so that you end up with a twist in that bar that you picked up. This will make sure that you don't get any unwanted holes in your increase like the yarn overs create. Next, the pattern says slip one purlwise with yarn in back, knit one and repeat to the end. So you're going to slip one purlwise with that yarn in the back, knit one, slip one, knit one, and I'm just going to do this all the way to the end, just slipping one and knitting one all the way across. Your last stitch should be a knit stitch, so if it's not, just go back and double check that you do slip knit, and do make sure that you have the right number of stitches on your needle through the heel flap. Next, I'm going to work row 1 of the heel flap repeat, so I'm going to turn my work. I'm not working in the round anymore, so I'm now going to work backwards. So I'm going to slip one purlwise and then purl across. So I've now completed row 1 and I'm going to turn my work because we're working back and forth for the heel flap. And I'm going to work row 2, which says slip one, can you see that? Slip one purlwise with yarn in back, knit one, repeat to end. So I'm going to slip one purlwise, knit one, slip one, knit one, slip one, knit one, and we're going to do that all the way across. And that is the repeat for our heel flap. You might be able to see that it's forming a slight ribbed effect on one side, and on the other side you have these strands of yarn. This makes the heel flap a bit squishy and more durable than just regular stockinette stitch. You want to repeat rows 1 and 2 until you've worked them a total of 15, 16 or 17 times, depending on your size. I'm working a size 2, so I want to complete this 16 times, which will be a total of 32 rows, not including the setup row. It's easy to count because your slip stitches will be twice the height of your regular stitches. So I'm going to work 16 repeats for my heel flap, and then I will meet you back up and show you how to turn the heel and pick up stitches for the gusset. Okay, so I have completed my repeats and I've knitted the majority of my heel flap. So your next row is the wrong side, and this will put you at the starting position to knit the heel turn. So I'm just going to slip and purl across as I have done this whole time, but when I get to the last 3 stitches I am going to decrease because we increased 1 stitch at the very beginning of our heel flap in order to have an even number. So we want to decrease back to our original stitch count. Okay, so I'm at my last 3 stitches here, so I'm going to purl 2 together, like so, and purl 1. So that will bring your heel flap back to the original stitch count, and you're ready to go ahead and work the heel flap. Okay, I have now knit my heel flap. I've done 16 repeats, and it's easy to track because these slipped stitches are twice the height of regular stitches, and they are sort of raised. You can see that subtle ribbed effect once the heel flap is complete, and on the other side you have the strands from holding the yarn in the back, which just gives the heel flap an added bit of squish. So just to count, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. So I'm going to go ahead and knit my heel turn. Now, as you work this heel turn, you'll be turning and working back and forth in complete rows, but you don't need any short row turns or shadow wraps, so just turn and continue because these holes will be closed up on the next row. So for row 1, I want to slip 1 purlwise and knit to 11 stitches before the end. So slip 1 purlwise with yarn in back and knit until 11 stitches before the end. So I'm just going to knit across, so I have 11 stitches on my left needle. I'm going to slip, slip and knit, knit 1 and then turn. You should have 8 stitches on your left needle now, so I'm just going to turn. I'm not doing any German short rows or shadow wraps or anything of the sort. For row 2, we're going to slip 1 purlwise with yarn in front and then purl to 11 stitches before the end. So we're essentially mirroring what we just did. So slip, and then I'm just going to purl until there are 11 stitches left. Three, 6, 9, and 11. Okay, so I have 11 stitches here. I'm going to purl 2 together. So that's just purling through 2 stitches as if they were one. Purl 1 and turn. So I should have 8 stitches on this right needle now. For row 3, I'm going to slip 1 purlwise. We're always slipping that first one. Knit to 1 stitch before the gap where you last turned. So I will knit across, and where you turned on the last row will form a little gap. And I'll show you what it looks like. So here we have a gap. This is where we turned. So what we want to do is we want to slip, slip, knit, like so. Then we want to knit 1, and we should have 6 stitches on our left, and then we're just going to turn again. We want to slip 1 purlwise and purl across to that gap. So here I am at the gap again. So I'm just going to purl 2 together through that gap. This is why we don't need any short rows or wraps or anything like that, because we close that hole with the decrease. So purl 2 together, purl 1, and then we have our 6 stitches on the left. So you're going to continue knitting or purling to the gap, closing that gap, and knitting or purling 1 additional stitch until you have completed all of these edge stitches. So that is just repeating rows 3 and 4 until all the stitches have been worked. You should be left with 19 stitches for size 1, 23 for size 2, or 27 for size 3 remaining. I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I am on our final repeat. You should have 2 stitches either side of your gaps. There should be an even number of stitches either side of your gaps as you work across. So I'm just going to finish this last repeat, and then I will show you how to pick up stitches for the gusset. So I'm just knitting across to that gap. Slip, slip, knit, and knit 1. Now I've worked all the stitches on the left. I just need to purl back, so slipping that first stitch and purl all the way over to that gap, purl 2 together and purl 1. So I have now completed my heel turn, and it should look something like this. You have what looks like sort of a heel. So the next thing that we want to do for our socks is slip 1 purlwise, knit across the heel stitches, and then pick up and knit 16, 17 or 18 stitches along the side of the heel flap. So I'm going to slip 1, knit across, okay, so I have knit across. I'm now going to pick up and knit. This is not as difficult as it sounds, and I can show you 2 ways to do this. So the first, all of these slipped stitches that we made, they create these lovely, easy to see edge stitches. So I'm just going to take my needle and place it through both loops, wrap my yarn around and pick up that stitch. Okay, so that's these 2 loops on the very side. I'm going to go into that hole there, under both those loops, grab that yarn and pull it through. I'll show you again. You have these 2 edge stitches here, and you want to put your needle through them like so. Grab that yarn and pull it through. Now the first time I knitted a pair of socks, I found this very, very difficult to do. So if this is something you are struggling to do, you can use a crochet hook. So with the crochet hook, turn your heel flap so that you can see all of these slipped stitches at the side. And you want to take your crochet hook. This is just a 2mm one because it's fine enough to use with the yarn, but any size that fits will do. So I'm just going to take my crochet hook and push it through those 2 loops of the stitch. Make sure you have those 2 legs like that. And you just grab your stitch, lift it up, and place it over your needle. Now, if you are picking them up this way, as you come round to knit again, pay attention that your stitches are oriented the right way so that they don't become twisted. I will pick up a few the wrong way so that when we come back round, I can show you how to make sure that your stitches are oriented the correct way. So I'm just, whoops, there we go. I'm just picking them up and putting them on my needle, either with my crochet hook or with my needle, like so. And you want to pick up one stitch in every one of these slipped stitches down the side. Okay, so I have picked up 3, 6, 9, 12, 16 stitches. Some people may choose to pick up an additional stitch to close any possible gap that might form here, but because of the position of the lace, it really isn't necessary because whatever hole does form will just blend in. Next, you're going to want to knit across needle 1 following the next row of the chart. Okay, I've now knitted across needle 1 and I want to push all of these stitches up onto my needle. So I'm just going to push them all on. Okay, so now you should be looking at something a bit like this, and we're going to pick up the other stitches for this side. So now we want to pick up all of our stitches for this side of the heel flap, and I'm going to repeat the exact same process that I did on the other side. So I'm going under those 2 loops, I'm picking up, oops, that's a splitty stitch, so I'm going under those 2 loops and picking up a stitch. I'm going under those 2 loops and picking up a stitch, just like this, the whole way across. I'll go ahead and speed this up so you don't have to watch the whole process. Okay, so I have my 17 stitches on my needle and I'm just going to continue knitting this side. So now I'm knitting these stitches that I picked up along that other side of the heel flap, and it does get a little bit uncomfortable here, so don't worry about bunching your stitches up really close together on the right hand needle. Okay, so I'm now approaching that stitch that I deliberately picked up the wrong way. If you see, all of my stitches are pretty much perpendicular. They are straight on the needle, if maybe ever so slightly pointing to the left. But then I come across this one stitch that is pointing to the right. So I'm just going to knit up to it, and then here you'll see that it's a bit more open and we can see both legs of the stitch. So I'm going to just knit into the back of the loop, or I can slip it and rotate it so that I can knit it the correct way. So if you find any of your stitches are facing the wrong way, that is how you put it right. Because if you knit into the front of the stitch like you normally would when your stitch is oriented wrong, it will twist. Can you see how it is twisting there? So I'm just going to knit the rest of the stitches on this needle, and then we can move on to our gusset shaping and repeat. So now you should have something that looks a bit like this. It can be a little bit uncomfortable to knit like this, but that won't last for very long because once you've got in a few of your gusset decreases, it will all get a bit more sock-like and normal. So the pattern says that you want to continue knitting in the round. Okay, our beginning of round is now at the beginning of needle 1 again, and we're just going to knit the next row of that chart. So that will either be around 4 or around 16. So I'm just going to knit across now. Okay, so that was round 1. I'm now going to move on to round 2. So for needle 1, you always want to knit the next row of the chart. But this round, on round 2, we are going to do our gusset decreases. So I'm going to knit the next round on the chart, which for me is round 5 and should be 17 if you knitted a half diamond. Okay, so I have knit across my needle 1 again, and now on needle 2 we want to knit our gusset decreases. So round 2, needle 1, work the next round of the chart, we've done that. Needle 2, knit 1, slip slip knit, knit until 3 stitches before the beginning of the round, knit 2 together, knit 1. This will decrease 2 stitches. So I'm going to knit 1, I'm going to SSK, and then I'm going to knit until 3 stitches before the marker. Okay, I'm now 3 stitches before the beginning of the round. So I want to knit 2 together and knit 1. Okay, so I have completed knitting my gusset decreases, and as you can see, those decreases that take place every other round, they form this really nice clean decrease line, and this is what forms our gusset. So if I flatten this way, you can see it is starting to look far more sock shaped. So you should now be back at your original stitch count. I have 66 stitches in total. That is 33 on my needle 1 and 33 on my needle 2. So what you want to do now is continue to work the foot with the lace pattern on needle 1 and stockinette underneath on needle 2. So that is just work the next row of the chart and then knit all stitches. And you want to repeat this until the sock is approximately 5 centimeters shorter than your desired length. Okay, I will put some of the maths on screen for you here, but I will just talk you through how I calculate how long my socks should be. So you want your socks to be 3 to 5 centimeters shorter than your foot length. I wear a European 41 or a UK 8 or a US women's 10. My feet are 27 centimeters long, which means I want my socks to be around 23 centimeters long. You want to continue working the foot. You want to continue knitting the foot with the chart on needle 1, stockinette on needle 2, and you want to begin your toe when the foot reaches around 5 centimeters shorter than the desired length. So if I want my socks to be around 23 centimeters long, I want to start my toe when the foot reaches around 18 or 19 centimeters. So I will just measure it from this heel point here. I have my Chalgu tape measure, which my cats really like to play with. So if I just measure from that heel point, I'm at 7 centimeters. So I want to knit until my sock is around about this length. And if you look at the length of a diamond, the diamond is approximately 4.5 centimeters long. So if I knit another 2 diamonds, that should put me in the right position to start knitting my toe. Now, I'm going to keep on knitting, just repeating the chart on needle 1 and stockinette on needle 2. And I'm going to keep knitting until my sock is around 18 centimeters long. You want to make sure that where you end your sock to begin the toe, you either end on a row 13, which will give you a half diamond, or a row 25, which will give you a full diamond. So I'm going to go ahead and knit until my socks are approximately 18 or 19 centimeters, and then I will meet you back up to show you how to decrease for the toe. There are two toe options. I will be showing you both toe options, so whichever your chosen toe is, do not worry, I will show you how to do this. Okay, so I have finished knitting the length of my sock, and I'm now going to start the toe. You want to make sure, again, that you finish either on a row 13 or a row 25. This just makes sure that you either get a full repeat or a half repeat so that your socks look nice and even. So, with the socks, you have two options. The first option is an anatomic toe. This is because our feet aren't triangular, and some people find it more comfortable to have an anatomic version that are shaped for your feet. So I'm first going to show you how to do the anatomic toe, then I will show you how to do the wedge toe. If you don't know which toe you would like to use, I'm going to show you how to put in a lifeline. So if you knit it, don't like it, it will be very easy to frog it back and start the other toe. Okay, so to add a lifeline, the first thing you want to do is grab yourself a tapestry needle. This is just a blunt, cheap metal one. And then you want some scrap yarn. This is just some yarn left over from another sock. But don't worry, you won't be wasting this yarn. You don't have to cut it from the ball. So I'm just going to thread my tapestry needle, like so. Pick up my knitting, and all I'm going to do is pass my tapestry needle purlwise through each of these stitches, being careful not to split any of the yarn. I like to do these a few at a time. You can do them 1 by 1 or 10 by 10. It's entirely up to you. Just make sure that you don't split the yarn or create any knots as you're going across. See there, I've split the yarns. We just want to come out of that, and like so. If you find you don't have enough space on your needle to do it like this, you can slide your needle out and do it on the cable where you have a little bit more wiggle room, like this. So I'm just going along and passing this tapestry needle and spare yarn through all of my stitches, making sure that I don't split any of the yarn. Just a few at a time. Okay, so you can see that that yarn passes through all of my stitches here. So I'm just going to flip my yarn over and then continue the same thing on the way back. So just passing them through purlwise. I'll do it on the cable because I have a little bit more room. There we go. So I'll take my needle out. I will just pull the yarn back through so that I don't have a humongous tail. Now, if your yarn is reserved for another project, or if you want to save it, you don't have to cut it. If you're going to find it annoying, you can cut it. It's entirely up to you. I am just going to snip it off here like that. Then underneath my needles, I'm just going to tie a little bow to make sure that there is no way that this will slip out of any of my stitches. Okay, with my lifeline in place, I'm going to start knitting the anatomic toe. Please excuse my nails, I have peeled all of them off in the time that I have been knitting this sock. Okay, so for our anatomic toe, which we're going to do first, on round 1, we want to knit 1, slip, slip, knit, and knit to the end of the needle. So I'm going to knit 1, slip, slip, knit, and then knit to the end of the needle. Now, if you have put in a lifeline, it can be a little bit cumbersome, just making sure that you don't catch that yarn as you go through. But your next row will be loads easier, so it's only this row that you need to worry about. Okay, so for needle 2, we're going to knit to the last 3 stitches, knit 2 together, and knit 1. So all our decreases are happening on one side. This is what forms that anatomical toe shaping, and on the left foot, it will be the opposite way round. So I'm just knitting to the end, being careful not to pick up my lifeline at the same time. Whoops, like I just did. Okay, so I'm at my last 3 stitches here, so I'm going to knit 2 together, being careful to avoid splitting my lifeline, like so, and knit 1. So for the right foot, all of our decreases will be taking place on the right hand side to curve your decreases around your small toes, little toes, you know what I mean. On the left foot, it will be the other way around, and you will knit across and decrease, then decrease and knit across. So round 2, we're just going to knit all stitches. Okay, so if you have knit the anatomic toe or the wedge toe and decided that you do not like the toe that you have chosen, but you have put in a lifeline, congratulations! I will show you how to frog back your work and pick up your stitches from this lifeline. So I'm just going to slip my needles out, like so. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to unravel. Okay, so the purpose of a lifeline is so that you can't drop your stitches. None of these stitches are going anywhere, they're not unraveling because they are held by my lifeline. So to pick up my stitches, what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to turn my sock around first. And I'm going to do the wrong side first just because it is the easiest. So I want to make sure that I'm picking up stitches from the exact middle point so that I have the same number of stitches on each needle. And I'm going to do the exact same thing that I did with that tapestry needle. I'm just going to slip my needle through the stitches purlwise. Okay, so my stitches are now back on this needle. Now I'm going to turn my yarn towards me, turn my sock, and I'm going to pick up the other stitches from this side. Okay, this will make sure that all of my stitches are on the right needle, facing the right way. So again, I'm just going purlwise. Just give it a visual once over to make sure that all of your needles are, to make sure that all of your stitches are sat on your needle. And then you can go ahead and give a tug on your lifeline. If it doesn't come, you can just pull it from the other side. Come on. There we go. So I'm just going to pull on my lifeline, and all my stitches are now back on my needles where they were when I put that lifeline in. You don't have to take your lifeline out if you're not sure if you're going to make a mistake on the toe. Go ahead and leave it in. I'm just going to give my stitches a quick count to make sure that they are correctly distributed. 33, yep, we are all good. So let's knit option 2, the wedge toe. Okay, so option 2, the wedge toe. Wedge toes are one of the most popular toes. The majority of socks are knit with a wedge toe, and they are very, very easy and simple to do. So the first thing you want to do is knit all of the stitches. Okay, so I have knit all of my stitches, and we're going to move on to round 2. So we want to knit 1, slip, slip, knit, knit to the last 3 stitches, knit 2 together and knit 1. We're going to do this on both needles, so our decreases are going to be identical. So knit, SSK, and then knit all the way across, until the last 3 stitches, and I'm going to knit 2 together and knit 1. I will then do the exact same. Oops. I will then do the exact same for needle 2. So knit 1, slip, slip, knit, knit across, knit 2 together and knit 1. So those are, whoopsie daisy. So those are our decreases. We work a symmetrical decrease on either side on both needles, and then we knit all the stitches. So I'm going to go ahead and repeat rounds 1 and 2 a total of 10 times for size 2, 9 for size 1, 10 for size 2, 11 for size 3, until I have 22, 26 or 30 stitches remaining. There will be 11, 13 or 15 stitches on each needle, and then we're going to graft these together with the Kitchener stitch, which I will show you in a minute. Okay, so your toe now should look something like this. I have knitted all of the repeats, and I have 13 stitches left on each needle. So we're going to graft our toe together now. You want a tail that is about 3 times or 3 to 4 times the length of the number of stitches that you want to graft. So as you can see, I've got about 4 times the length there, and I've threaded my tapestry needle. So we're going to set up for the Kitchener stitch. First, you want to take your tapestry needle and go purlwise through the first stitch and leave it on the needle, like so. Make sure your yarn is coming underneath your needles. Then you want to take your tapestry needle and go knitwise through the stitch on your back needle, again making sure your yarn is coming underneath. So now we've set up for the Kitchener stitch. There's a very easy, simple repeat, and it's just knit on, knit off, purl on, purl off, knit on. So I'm going to go knitwise through that first stitch and take it off the needle, like so. And I'm then going to go purlwise through the next stitch and leave that on my needle. Purlwise through the stitch on the back and take it off. And knitwise through the next stitch and leave it on. So I will show you that repeat again. You want to go knitwise through the first stitch and pull it off the needle. Purlwise through the next stitch and leave it on the needle. Purlwise through the stitch on the back needle and off. And knitwise through the next stitch. And it's just those 4 repeats. So knit off, purl on, purl off, knit on. I'll show you once more. So knit off, purl on, purl off, knit on. And you can see that this is forming a knit stitch between my knit stitches. So I'm going to go ahead and do that the whole way across the row. So I have grafted the whole way across, like so, and I'm just going to take my yarn, my needle, and poke it through the toe here, quite close to my final stitch, and just reach inside and grab it. Just so that little bump that forms on the final stitch is hidden. And there you go. All that is left now to do is weave in your ends, wash and block your sock. So I'm going to show you how to weave in your ends. This is notoriously the worst part of knitting, but it is not hard. So this is what the inside of your sock will look like. You can see where we picked up all of our stitches nice and neatly, and we should have 2 ends to weave in. I'll start with the toe just because it's the worst. Not difficult though, so I'm going to thread my end onto my tapestry needle, and then down the side I'm just going to take my yarn through underneath a bunch of the little purl bumps. Kind of go for a scooping motion to help me go underneath the bumps. Now here it does not matter if you split your yarn, because what secures your tail in place is the yarn's stickiness. So what this means is wool likes to cling to itself, and as you wear your socks it will felt slightly, and this will hold your ends in place forever. So I'm just going back and forth on myself underneath different purl bumps, different angles. like so. And I like to go back and forth 2 to 3 times. On the inside, it doesn't look the neatest, but you can't see it on the outside, and it's nice and secure, so I don't mind at all. There are different ways to weave in your ends. Some people like to use a duplicate stitch. Some people like to needle felt their ends. But I just like to go under and through my power bumps, sometimes splitting the stitches in different directions, like so. So this is where my woven end is, and I'm just going to take my scissors and snip that off. That is the first end. The second end is much easier because when weaving in ends for ribbing, you can follow the rib. So if I thread my tapestry needle like so, I'm going to find the column directly below where my knit stitches are, and I'm going to just go underneath the right leg of each stitch, just swooping around and under. It's very, very, very easy. Also neat and hidden. So I'm just going under the right leg of my stitches all the way down. I'm going to pull that through like so. Then I'm going to rotate and go back up the other side. So just swooping round like so. Again, if you go through the stitch, it does not matter. It will just help your yarn stick in place. So I bring that up through, and then if I want, I can also go down the next one. So just swooping round and going under the right leg of these stitches all the way down like so. And I rotate to come back up the other side. And this yarn will not be going anywhere. So I can trim off my end like so. And that is your finished sock. All that is left to do is wash and block. And that is your finished Diamond Rain sock. If that you have found this tutorial helpful, please leave a comment below and let me know. If you do knit the sock and you post it to Instagram, just use hashtag Diamond Rain sock so I can see your socks. I hope you have enjoyed this video. Thank you. You can come in. It's alright, the video is going to be heavily edited, because if anybody wanted to sit and watch me knit a sock in real time, it would be incredibly boring. And we're knitting through the front of the loops. Voila! Sweetheart, come on. Come on, baby. Good girl. Thank you. Yeah.